There are a variety of types of journeys that we might take throughout our lives. I've shared much of my journey with you over the years. Today, I'm going to share with you a whole different type of journey that I never anticipated being on. Welcome, I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. So first, I do want to say that it's not bad, and it isn't going to shift my focus from connecting with you here or on social media with Courageous Journeys. So now that I have that out of the way, throughout my life, there have been things that have happened that have made me kind of like planted a seed and just made me wonder at times about something. And much of that has to do with, from childhood till now, people will sometimes ask me, what are you? Meaning, what is my ethnicity? And as a kid, I had no idea really what they were asking. But I would just typically say white. And my grandmother told me that we also had some Native American history, so I would sometimes say there's a little bit of Native American history. But people would often suggest that there was something else mixed in with that European, Western European blood. And I didn't pay that much attention to it. And then different things that were said over the years got me just kind of wondering a little bit more. Is it possible that maybe part of what people are picking up on or seeing somehow is potentially some African American ancestry? And part of that is a combination of a few things. One is that back in the era of big perms and Mariah Carey, people often told me that I look like Mariah Carey. And I learned that back then, I learned that her father was black and her mother was white. So I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And there came a time later when I looked up my father's side of the family and my maiden name and discovered that the majority of people that I found were actually African American. And so I've always kind of wondered about this. And on top of it, there was a reason that I wondered if it's possible that my biological father might be different than my sibling's biological father. He is on our birth certificates, all of us. My mother was married to him when I was born. But it's been suggested that I look different than my siblings. And I am 9 years younger than my sister, 10 years younger than my brother. So there's always been, I think, this idea floating out there. But again, never really gave it that much thought. Fast forward, 5 years ago, I decided to send my DNA into 23andMe. Really curious, just in general, what it would show, but also really kind of interested in uncovering some African American ancestry. Just like, most Americans, we have some African ancestry at some point, right? And much of that is African American for a lot of people. So I got the results back and was a little surprised, a little confused. Didn't give it too much thought and just thought, oh, okay, whatever. And I didn't know that much about the accuracy or anything like that. And I think maybe, I don't know, a year or two later, I started thinking about it again. I was curious, so I decided to send my DNA into Ancestry, thinking maybe 23andMe somehow confused my DNA with somebody else's, or there was a glitch or something like that. And the Ancestry DNA came back and it was basically the same, which was kind of reinforced that confusion, made me much more curious about, okay, what is happening here? And of course, created some suspicion about what I believe to be true. Fast forward to October of this year. I was having dinner. I went back to Illinois. I was having dinner with my extended family, and somebody mentioned my niece actually being my cousin. And I was shocked, like, what? And also incredibly confused. Like, just logistically, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, how could that possibly be? Well, I was definitely curious, and I felt like I was a little bit like a dog without a bone. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I immediately got online and started doing some searching to uncover how that could be. And it turned out that a first cousin, the DNA, in terms of the significance of the match, is very similar to what a half niece, half aunt relationship would look like. So all of that questioning throughout my life, the original DNA results, it made sense, at least to a degree. I still wasn't completely convinced, wondering if there's some other way that it could be true. So I ended up asking my sister, my only living relative, generationally for her back, still living, if she would do a DNA test. And fortunately, she agreed, and I am so grateful that she did. And on December 1st, the results came back, and she shared them with me, and so I was able to go onto the site and look. And there was this moment that felt really surreal and actually reminded me so much of the moment that I was no longer able to be in denial or minimize my childhood trauma. And I've shared that experience before, but in that moment, it was almost like I couldn't get my breath, and almost like a slap in the face with the reality that this is in fact my story. And I know that a lot of you have experienced something similar. When we get to that place where we're really ready and able to fully accept the truth and no longer deny, minimize, or rationalize it. And as I'm looking at the results, there was a moment of that, not the same, but similar, like taking a deep breath. The emotion came. On one hand, I felt really numb. And on the other hand, I felt this kind of intense energy. And I just kind of sat there looking at it. I don't know how much time passed, a few seconds maybe, but all this questioning going through my mind. And I quickly did some searching again to see if there's any way that that percentage of DNA could still be full siblings, and the answer was no. And the result was half sibling, which is what I suspected for quite some time. And even after the situation with my half niece, it was the only thing that would make sense. So on December 1st, I learned that the man that I believed to be my biological father was not, in fact, my biological father. And with that, accepting those DNA results from 5 years ago and the ancestry and what that really meant. So the ancestry showed that what I expected, which was some African American ancestry, was not the case. There is a small amount of African ancestry, which I think is probably the case for most of us here, but just a small amount. It did show that the ancestry that I have from that biological parent most recently stems from Mexico. And even just looking at when I first got the DNA back, and it showed me the matches, they were all Hispanic names. And I thought that was curious, and a part of me, of course, knew what that meant. Another part of me is like, is there any other way that could be true, and my dad could be my dad, and like maybe his father was Mexican and didn't know it, or half Mexican, or I don't know. There were a lot of possibilities that flowed through my mind. But in that moment, in recognizing that, seeing that that is the reality. And going back further, Spain, Portugal, Native American ancestry, but the people that I was connected to came from Mexico. And I was conceived and born in Illinois. So I have been kind of wrapping my mind around this reality. It's always been my reality. I just didn't know it was my reality. So just getting into a place where I'm feeling fully accepting of this truth. And I will say that I know for a lot of people, this can be really devastating news. And for me, possibly in part because I think there's been a part of me that's often wondered, I don't feel devastated at all. And part of that might also be because I didn't have a very close relationship with my father at all, ever, really. And he died in 1992, so he's been gone for a very long time. And I have no living relatives aside from my half-sister. So, or at least not that I'm aware of. So, I do have some mixed feelings about it. Again, part of me is a little bit detached from it. And a part of me, when I start thinking about it, I'm just really curious. Right now, I'm in a place where I just want to try to uncover who this man is. And I haven't even really given that much thought to if he's alive or anything like that, because I think I've kind of resigned myself to accepting the reality that given my age, there's a really good chance that he is no longer living. And I feel like I'm at a place of acceptance for that. Of course, if it becomes determined that he is no longer living, I'm learning who he is and he is no longer living, I might have some additional feelings about that. If I learned that who he is and he is still living, of course, I'm sure there's going to be some feelings about that. But right now, I am just in the beginning stages of this journey. And I've spoken with a few people who help people find their biological family. And unfortunately, right now, the consensus seems to be that it may be virtually impossible to uncover who he actually is. Because while I have tons of matches, they're all pretty distant. So unless somebody got a DNA test for Christmas and will be sending it in, which is what the people have told me to kind of just hope for and to watch for, there's a possibility that I may never know who he is. And I will deal with that when that becomes more certain. But right now, I'm just working towards figuring that out. So while this journey is not at all related to healing childhood trauma, it is interesting how no matter what we go through in our life later on down the road, and even with COVID, we talked about this, right? That it can bring up some familiar things. And I feel like I grieved my relationship or lack of relationship with my father long before he actually died in many ways. And then again when he died, and then again years later as I continued healing. But while this is a very different journey, there's some connection. And if you want to follow along, make sure to follow me on TikTok or Facebook. I probably won't be sharing much here on YouTube unless it gets to a particular place where there's some very specific information to share or something like that, but I won't really be sharing the journey along the way here on YouTube. So you're welcome to follow me on TikTok or Facebook. So again, I don't know where it's going to take me. I do want to be clear that it's not going to affect my work at all. And if you are worried, I really am okay. And if I recognize that for whatever reason, I'm struggling with it in some way. Just like I encourage all of you, I will seek help. I will seek help in both uncovering who he is and what all of that means, as well as mental health support, if and when I need it, as many times as I need it. But again, right now, I'm feeling just curious. And there's a part of me that even feels this a little bit of kind of anticipatory excitement in a way, like there's this new adventure in a sense, no matter where it takes me. So thank you for watching. If you happen to know somebody who is like a magician when it comes to uncovering this kind of stuff, please make sure to share that person's information below, because I can use all the help I can get. And I know that I'm not alone on this journey. I've seen so many stories of people who have, through DNA testing, uncovered things about their own families that is surprising. And for some people, it is incredibly devastating. And for others, it's relieving and exciting. And there's a whole new family out there they never knew existed. But I know that it's become a big thing, that there are so many people who are finding their way through on this journey as well. So if you have a similar story, I would love to just hear that you're out there. So feel free to share that as well. And of course, anything else you'd like to share, please do. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this, I don't know, interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And again, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so and click the bell for notifications. Thanks so much for watching.